Hello again. I was watching a speech at the ARC conference by Douglas Murray. Now, ARC is the Alliance for Responsible Citizenship, and there's been a couple of times this week where something interesting has popped out of this conference, one of which was Douglas's speech, the other of which I'll cover in another video to do with the Tory party. I'll provide a link down below for this speech. I thought it was interesting and a different take on where our societies can go, in effect a different take on conservatism, and I'm sure you'll draw your own conclusions from the speech, but I would urge you to watch it. I'm just going to cover a couple of points that I thought were especially relevant to how we're going to cure what's going on in our societies at the moment. How are we going to get through this? What are we going to do, not just in the UK, but generally in Europe and Western civilization? How are we going to counteract this infection that we seem to have brought on ourselves, where we seem to be decaying as opposed to flourishing? And Murray did mention something called civilisational renewal, which I thought was a good concept. He mentioned at the start some of the stark differences between America and Europe, especially since the Trump administration has taken power. He thought that, things such as DOGE, or the Department for Government Efficiency, there's changes coming to the Department of Education, how the spirit of innovation has taken over in America, and they're looking to, for want of a better phrase, make America great again, while in Europe we just seem content to hand-wring, navel-gaze, spend our time in human rights courts, and the only thing we seem good at is developing new regulations and stifling free market enterprise. He did mention as well the NHS and the money pit that the NHS seems to be, and he seems to have some type of disagreement with the assisted dying bill. Now, those topics aside, he then went on to discuss religion and Hamas, and it's a topic that he's especially familiar with. He did mention, I thought was a good point, that when these great civilisational moments happen, when something happens to a group of people, these generational moments, it gives you a sense and it gives you an understanding that you are reminded of ultimately what you're fighting for. And I thought that was a very salient point, to be reminded about what it is we're fighting for in the UK especially. There's a lot of talk at the moment about isn't London falling to pieces? London has fallen, the UK has fallen, everything's over. This theory of white flight, people leaving the country, or people running off to the shires, etc. And it's really during these types of civilisational moments that you start to realise exactly what we had in Europe. And Murray actually quite brazenly states that we had the greatest civilization the world has ever known. And when you actually think about that statement, and you think about, well, did we actually have the greatest civilization? You'd have to say yes. In Europe, think about it, the Renaissance, the Middle Ages, art, culture, politics, all of these things have originated from Europe. And everything good in the world has ultimately stemmed from Europe. There are other things that have happened in other countries, but science, medicine, culture, art, all of these things. Europe has so many good things, particularly in the UK, and particularly being the home of parliaments and democracy, if you like, and all of the culture in Europe. We have so much to be proud of, but yet we seem to want to wring our hands and chastise ourselves all the time. Another point that he brought up, he was watching an author, Noah Harari, author of Sapiens. Now, I've read Sapiens. I don't know whether you've ever read the book Sapiens. I kind of enjoyed the first bit, and then I just thought it was going all over the place. And people say it's this fabulous book and it charts world history and all this, and I was just quite bored with it. I disagree. I don't think it was a very good book at all. But the author is kind of esteemed in the intelligentsia in these types of circles, and he was asked a few weeks ago, what's the one book that you believe we should keep and look back on and say that was the book that could change humanity, that was the book, the most important book? And he actually mentioned that we are entering a time of such extreme change. And well, when I say extreme change, we're talking about change to the point where nobody really knows what's going to happen. And Murray actually made the point that, well, there is a book. It's the book of your forebears. And Douglas was talking about Christianity, the Bible, in effect. Well, I believe he was. However, we do have to actually bear in mind that although Murray does believe in Christianity, the Bible, and, I myself, you could class me as a cultural Christian, Harari does have a point in terms of, well, what's going on at the moment. I mean, we've got the AI revolution happening, which is set to take over approximately 70% of blue and white collar jobs over the next decade. That's never mind the fact that in California at the moment, FSD, or full self-driving cars, have been driving people around, and there's people living now over in America that haven't touched the steering wheel in their car for a year. And lots of people over here do believe, there's this FSD, this full self-drive technology. It's a long way off, and it may be a few years off, but certainly the technology has already been used, and it's been shown that Tesla themselves, whatever you think of Tesla, the Tesla AI system that self-drives the cars, it watches 250,000 hours per day of footage from Tesla. That's 250,000 hours the AI system processes, and the estimates are that that's going to reduce traffic accidents by about 90%. Now, you could be for or against that, but the reality of it is that it's coming. Aside from that, we've got blockchain technology. So blockchain technology is coming, and it's going to revolutionize Web 3. You may not like cryptocurrency, you might like cryptocurrency or Bitcoin as it's known, but regardless of whether you like it or not, blockchain is coming. And all of these technology S-curves, so when a technology is initially developed, it goes along a certain line, then it takes a sharp curve up, and then it levels off at the top. A little bit like what it was like when mobile phones were introduced. So there was a little bit, and then a lot, and then it kind of plateaus off. And now the amount of mobile phones globally stays at around the same amount. And these S-curves are happening in multiple different areas. So it's happening, as I said, in AI, in blockchain, in cryptocurrencies generally, in digital money, Web 3. We're talking about brand new technologies. We're talking about medicine 2.0. We're talking about societal changes, digital art, digitalized, tokenized mortgages, and all this stuff going on at the moment. You could buy £10 worth of a Van Gogh painting if you really wanted to, and that's been tokenized. Decentralized government. In short, what we're talking about is the singularity is coming. And these changes over the next few years are going to have dramatic impacts on society. The point that Murray was making is, yes, that's all well and good, but the book of our forebears, Christianity, the Bible, will be the base, the foundation for what we need going forward. So whilst Harari was correct, I believe in all of these technologies, and certainly over the next decades, our lives are going to change dramatically. But even though they may change dramatically, are we going to be happy with the society in which we live? Are we going to be happy with the societies that we've created? And ultimately, what we need to be thinking about is, are we going back to those foundational principles of Christianity? Then, of course, Murray moved on to a topic that he's very well versed in, and that's mass migration, and what he called the deculturation of our societies. And he used an analogy from his friend Eric Weinstein, who believed, Eric, when he was younger, he believed that all ice cream flavours were vanilla. So he believed they were all vanilla, and all other ice cream flavours were made from vanilla. And it wasn't until he was an older person that he realised that vanilla itself was a flavour. And Murray likened that to our culture, and he said vanilla is a very, very complex flavour within itself, just as our Western cultures are complex. And this is where he went on to make the point that we have the greatest civilization the world has ever seen. And just because Mozart was great, it doesn't mean that we can't build on that we can't reclaim what's ours and tell people, I'm very proud of my culture, I'm very proud of what Europe has achieved. I'm extremely proud of everything. Yes, no culture is 100% pure. All cultures and people make mistakes. But this hand-wringing and feeling the need that we need to absorb different cultures in order to propel our culture into something that's greater is not necessarily the case. We already had the world's greatest culture, and we should have been building on our past achievements, not knocking it down and tearing it apart as we seem to want to do at the moment. And then, of course, he made the point, and he's made this point a number of times. He said that if people want to join our culture, then they should join us. If not, there are other places they can be. Now, that statement is used in the past. You could have used this as a racial slur in the past, saying, go back to your own country and all of this that racists used to use decades ago. It's not so much seen now. But I think this feeling or this statement that Murray has is correct. I believe that we have a fabulous culture. I believe if people want to come to our culture and experience our culture and be in our culture, then that's great. Come and join the party. Doesn't matter where you're from, come and join the party. That's fine. But if you don't like the culture and you don't want this culture to work and you want to rip and tear at the culture, then perhaps you should consider going somewhere else. And that's not a racist statement. It's just a statement of fact. This is our home, just like your home is your home, and it's fine to say, if you don't like this culture, then perhaps you should leave. And that was the point that he finished on. Food for thought. As I said, I've left the speech, and Douglas Murray is a far better orator than I'll ever be. He certainly puts it in a more charismatic way, and it's laced with humour as well. But I would urge you to click on it and formulate your own opinions on it. Thanks very much for your time, though. I appreciate it.